I've seen enough Florida tape to make me sick. They're really good. We are just, you're still in a state of, are we really here? Like, are we really one of the 4 teams that are playing for national championship? Obviously, the answer is yes. Sometimes it's harder to do what you're expected to do. And I suppose because we've been good all year long, this was expected. But boy, if you ever treat it that way, you're missing out on something. This is beyond special. And we recognize we're going to have to play the 2 best games of the year in order to be successful and cut down nets on Monday night.
Coach, we're going to start out on the right side with the Associated Press.
Bruce, Jim Vertuno with the Associated Press. First, congratulations on your award. I'd like to pivot slightly away from the actual basketball for a second. You talked about how special it is to be here. You are one of 3 Jewish coaches leading teams into the highest profile event in college sports right now. What does that mean to you at this time? And can you also speak to what you see as the impact and the importance of the Jewish Coaches Association in the past and going forward?
Well, I think it speaks to the fact that we live in the greatest country in the world. I always tell my players that there are going to be obstacles to success, but not roadblocks. And I just don't want to hear it that just because of anti-Semitism or just because of racism or just because of profiling, you can't be anything you want to be. Yes, there are going to be challenges and there are going to be obstacles. So for 3 Jewish coaches and Calvin Sampson, all of us, right, to be able to get here, you work hard, you do the right things, you surround yourself with great people, and anybody can be anything in this country because we live in the greatest country in the world. There is great history and tradition in the game of basketball in the Jewish community, because all it took was just one ball and maybe a basket in the inner cities, in the ghettos, in the neighborhoods with most of American Jewry lived in this century. We played basketball, and we're pretty good at it, and there's a history there. Specifically, I'm really proud of Todd and really proud of John for being young Jewish coaches and, wearing their faith on their sleeves. And they both played professionally in Israel, and they're both young mensches. And it's easier to be an old mensch than it is a young mensch these days. I did help found the Jewish Coaches Association many years ago. In fact, one of our first meetings was in San Antonio. And the idea is simply that there weren't that many. And I wanted to give those younger guys that were in GA positions or former players or kind of getting started a little bit of hope that they could, be successful as teachers and as mentors and as ministers, in this case, in the game of basketball. And so I was very pleased to help found the Jewish Coach Association, and now to see it under Matt Elkins and Scott Garza, Jason Belzer, really doing a nice job.
Reminder that the Auburn locker room is open and that the student-athlete breakouts are still going on. We're going to take our next question in the center of the room.
Hey, Coach. Daryl Dapprich, Auburn Daily. I had an opportunity to speak to you preseason and talk about the non-conference schedule that you had put together, and did you feel like that was because of the team that you had coming back? Looking back on it now, a lot of those games that you scheduled kind of draw the connection to how that paid off to get you to where you are right now in the Final Four.
Will do. I just want to finish your question. I wear this all the time, and that's this dog tag to bring the hostages home. I don't always wear it outside because I want it close to my heart, but this is another opportunity to remind the world that there are Americans. Edon Alexander is still held hostage, and we're praying that any day now he might get released. And just a reminder that while we're all celebrating this incredible championship here in San Antonio, there's tremendous suffering going on in the Middle East, and we pray for peace and the hostages to come home. And if the hostages are released, the death and the dying will stop. I want to give my assistant, Mike Burgermaster, credit for putting our schedule together. Yes, we did look at a group of seniors and recognize that we got a chance to have a pretty good team. And so let's just schedule up. I think the other thing is that the metrics with Quad 1 opportunities was something that we looked at. If you remember a year ago, we had a really, really good season, but we didn't have that many Quad 1 wins. Some really great programs that we played in the non-conference didn't have great years, and it actually hurt our seeding a year ago. So we just said, we're just not going to do that again. We're going to play as tough a schedule as we possibly can. The thing that you risk is that you're not going to be successful, and then the kids lose confidence in themselves and in what we do. But of course, this year, that wasn't the case. And I just think a couple things on it. Number one, I want to thank Kelvin Sampson for being willing to play us and think that Auburn coming to Houston would be a good thing to help his team get prepared for the season. And the other one I would like to thank also would be Matt Painter at Purdue. He just got done playing for a national championship, and yet he was willing to bring his Purdue Boilermakers down to Birmingham to start a neutral, because we're going back up to Indiana next year. So in other words, for Kelvin Sampson and for Matt Painter to think that a game against Auburn was going to be something that would help them tells me that we've got our program where I dreamed we'd get our program.
Next question is just to the left of the aisle.
Bruce, Nathan King, Auburn Undercover. You used the word trust a lot. You have with this team in particular. Chad was just talking about how much he likes the fact that he can stand up on the bench and call things out during a game, that he can call things out during practice. How valuable is having that mindset throughout the team, especially this time of year where every possession counts and you guys are trying to win a championship?
Okay, which Chad? Trust is important, and if you, in coaching and in teaching, even in parenting, if you are able to earn the trust of these younger people, and particularly in athletics, they will run through a wall for you. If you break that trust, if you're not honest with them, doesn't mean you're right. It's not about being right or wrong. It's about having them trust that you have their best interests at heart, that you're going to mentor them, that you're going to teach them, that you're going to hold them accountable. And one way you also trust them is you let them be themselves. You don't try to change their personalities. Not everybody has to be molded in the same way. And if some people misunderstand that's their problem. So we do let Chad Baker-Mazzara be himself. And as a result, it has an opportunity to bring out the best in him sometimes, as a player. The other thing is, players have got to make sacrifices. If you're going to be part of a team, you've got to be accountable to the other guys on a team. You got to share the basketball. Some nights it's going to be your night, some nights not. And when it's not, you got to trust the process. You got to trust your teammates. And I can't tell you how many times all season long we would look to the guy to your right, look to the guy to the left. If it wasn't for them, we wouldn't be here, or we would not have won that game. So you begin to rely on each other, which then helps build the trust.
Same area of the room, Chuck.
Coach Chuck Culpepper from the Washington Post. If you could think back to what you were like as a kid in Massachusetts and what it would have meant to you, how it would have mattered to turn on the TV and see 3 Jewish head coaches in a Final Four. Well,
I would have thought that it would have been Larry Brown, Hubie Brown, and if they had another brother, that Brown, right? Or not everybody knows that Guy Lewis at Houston was Jewish. It wasn't something that got a lot of attention back in the day, I don't think. And there have been others. I think as a young Jewish boy growing up in Boston, I would have been proud. But I also think back then it would have been a surprise to some of my peers that weren't Jewish. They may have been like, there's no way that would be the case, because obviously we're not athletic enough, and that's not the stereotype. But there is a stereotype about teaching. Jesus was a rabbi. And what is the definition of a rabbi? It's a teacher. And so that's part of my heritage. My Hebrew name is Mordechai. And if you know the story of Purim, Mordechai, he taught his niece, Queen Esther, he poured into her that if she did not reach out to the king somehow, Haman was going to have his way, and there would have been another Holocaust and a genocide of the Jewish people. And so silence is complicity in many, many ways, you know, for me and obviously what I stand for. And I think that's something that I'm proud of as a Jewish man.
In the center of the room.
Bruce, I want to ask about Denver. You get him out of this portal at FIU. He comes in as a scorer. 2 years in, he becomes one of your better perimeter defenders. To you, what has made him so good defensively?
Man, I mean, Denver was a bucket getter. He was a leading scorer in Conference USA. He's still a bucket getter. But he also recognized that the level of athlete, the level of speed and quickness, I mean, 2 years ago, he couldn't even dream of guarding Walter Clayton. All right, now he's going to give it a go. And like few, he's got a shot to be able to guard him with some help. And so Denver recognized that he had to work on his lower body, he had to work on his core. He had to make it a priority. So he got in the weight room, he got in the slide boards, he got stronger. You know, he was already blessed. He was blessed with a pretty good bucket. I always tell those guys that can sit down and get a nice big bucket. There's power in them, their legs, and Denver's developed some power there. But I think as a result of what he's done, he's made himself an incredibly valuable player. Coach Golden talked about him yesterday being one of the more underrated players in the tournament. And, you know, Denver's going to play a lot of professional basketball in his career because he can get buckets, which he always was able to do, and now he can guard anybody.
Up front to the right.
Hey, Coach, Aaron Bracey from Hoops HQ. Janai talked about how he's been overlooked his whole life, obviously starting at Morehead State. What has that done for him as a player? And when you recruit, how much do you value guys who've been overlooked? And if so, why?
Well, I think valuing guys that have been overlooked, and then you bring them into a place like Auburn where, like, here's the deal. I spoil my kids, but I will slap the rotten right out of them. I spoil my players, but I will slap the rotten right out of them. And when you get a guy that's been overlooked and you spoil him, somehow he is more appreciative. He's more grateful for the opportunity. And then he goes to work every single day trying to prove people wrong. And even all season long, when we've been ranked and we've been good and whatever, I have not allowed people to play the favorite card. You know, we are still, of all the teams that are here, you know, Houston has got history and tradition of winning Final Fours and being here before. And Billy Donovan won some with Florida. Now Todd's got him back, and Duke speaks for itself. This is. I don't want to say this is our one shining moment because we've had a couple, but this is rare. We are still going to play that undercard card, and we still got 2 more opportunities hopefully to prove that we're a great basketball team.
Coach, back in the room on the right, CL.
CL Brown with the Louisville Courier-Journal. Kind of piggybacking off of that, Bruce, and I'm going to ask you to speculate a little bit, but would Janai have been the same player if he would have started at an Auburn, if he would have started in a power conference, or did he kind of need that experience at Morehead to fuel what he has become?
We certainly benefited from the experience at Morehead. There's no question. And answer to your question, because I know what kind of a competitor he is, regardless of where he started, he would have done what he's doing right now because he is a great competitor. He's got a combination of an inner confidence and a little bit of a chip on his shoulder. So I think the biggest thing is he's always been second guessed, whether it was out of high school, even in the OVC, coming to Auburn, he wasn't fast enough, quick enough, didn't jump high enough. The game wouldn't translate his lack of athleticism. They're wrong. And I think the same thing's going to be true when it comes to the NBA. There'll be a lot of clubs that won't draft him because he's just not the prototypical jumper. I know a lot of great jumpers that are bad athletes. Janai Broome is a great athlete that doesn't jump very high.
To the left of the aisle, in the back of the room. To your right, gentleman with the green polo.
Bruce, Brian Stulls, Auburn Rivals. I spoke with your former manager, Michael Poe, last night. Can you quickly tell about that friendship and that relationship you have with him during your time at Milwaukee?
Yeah, Michael was working in the cafeteria at UW Milwaukee, bussing tables, and he was working in a job because he had some challenges, and I remember when I would walk into the cafeteria, you know, Michael's personality just boom, it just exploded. And I can remember so many times that the manager of the cafeteria would get upset with Michael because his job wasn't to have big personality and to meet and greet and to make everybody else's day and make everybody feel welcome and serve. His job was to clean up tables. And so he was in the wrong job. So as a coach, my job is to put my players in positions to be successful. I said, this is not his strength. And so I met his family, I met his parents, and I said, don't get me wrong, your son is incredibly talented. I want him to come over to the athletic department, over to the Klachi Center, and I want him to help be like our team manager and help our equipment guy and help our weight room guy and be a greeter and help us in recruiting. And I don't know, 2005, I guess 20 years later, he's still at UW Milwaukee, and he's way more famous than me. Like, they'll never name anything for me at UWM. He's been there 20 years. They should name the court after him. Michael Paul, one of my managers.